It all started innocently enough, the kind of warmth you feel when family draws closer. My nephew, Alex, had just moved to the city for his internship, and staying nearby made it easier for him to drop by often. He was the kind of young man anyone would admire, charming, polite, thoughtful, and our conversations easily picked up wherever they left off. I welcomed the company, the casual dinners, the shared jokes. It felt nice to have family close when life otherwise felt so stretched and thin. At first, it was small things, a compliment here, a lingering glance there. I brushed them off, telling myself it was just his affectionate nature. Family love, nothing more. After all, Alex had always looked up to me. I was the cool aunt he could confide in, joke with, seek advice from. When he asked if I could help him with some personal advice about relationships, I felt a small sense of pride. It was endearing to think he trusted me that much. One evening, as we sat sipping coffee on my back porch, he hesitated before speaking. There was a nervous energy around him, a rare vulnerability that made me lean in. He asked if I could teach him how to really connect with someone, how to read signals, how to understand when feelings were mutual. It was phrased carefully, almost academically, like a study topic he needed to pass. I laughed and teased him for making love sound like a final exam, but inside, something shifted. I felt the weight of the moment settle between us. Over the next few days, he began to text more, sometimes late at night with random thoughts or questions. His messages often ended with a compliment. "You always know the right thing to say," or "You're the best person I know." Again, harmless, I told myself. Family bonds can be close. It's only natural he feels comfortable. Then came the request that caught me completely off guard. We were clearing dishes one evening, casual conversation floating around like background noise, when he suddenly asked if we could take a short trip together. Just the two of us. A weekend away. No family, no distractions. Just time to really talk, reconnect, and he said he wanted to learn how to be better with people, how to be confident. I paused, plate in hand, unsure of how to respond. It wasn't the sort of thing family members usually requested. But he looked so genuine, so eager, that the hesitation melted into a tentative yes. Maybe it would be good for both of us. Maybe I needed the break too. As I agreed, he smiled in a way that seemed both relieved and something else. Something I couldn't quite name. I pushed the thought away, telling myself I was imagining things. After all, family is family. And if a little trip could help him grow into the man he was trying so hard to become, who was I to deny him that? Still, that night, lying in bed, a strange unease settled over me. I couldn't put my finger on it, but deep down, something told me that nothing would be quite the same after that weekend. April 28th, 1:29 p.m., Fahad Ali Baloch. The drive to the small coastal town was filled with easy conversation and laughter, the kind that fills the silence without effort. It felt good to escape the noise of daily life, to be around someone who saw me not through the lens of stress or responsibility, but simply as myself. Alex seemed relaxed, happier than I had seen him in a long time. We checked into a modest inn near the beach, 2 rooms across the hall from each other. Everything appeared simple and unremarkable, yet beneath the surface, something felt charged. We spent the first evening walking along the shoreline, talking about dreams, fears, and silly childhood memories. Alex opened up about the pressure he felt to be perfect, how hard it was to find someone who understood him without judgment. His words were heartfelt, and for a moment, I felt a deep ache of recognition. How many times had I wished for the same? Later, sitting on a bench under the stars, the conversation turned unexpectedly personal. He said he admired the way I carried myself, the way I seemed to know who I was. He said he wished he could find someone like me, someone real. I laughed it off, reminding him that family is supposed to say nice things. But he didn't laugh. He just looked at me, eyes steady, and said he meant every word. That night, back in my room, I found it hard to sleep. Every word replayed in my mind, the tone of his voice, the intensity of his gaze. I told myself it was harmless, that he was just young and searching for emotional anchors. But even as I reasoned with myself, I couldn't deny the warmth that had spread quietly in my chest. The next day, we hiked a trail overlooking the ocean. It was beautiful, serene. Halfway up, he stopped, catching his breath and catching my hand. I thought nothing of it at first, but he didn't let go. His fingers tightened slightly around mine, and when I glanced over, the look he gave me wasn't familial. It was something far more vulnerable, more raw. I pulled away gently, trying to laugh it off, but the air between us had shifted. He didn't apologize. Instead, he said he couldn't hide it anymore. That the person he had feelings for wasn't some classmate or a friend back home. It was me. He said I was the one he thought about when he imagined love. I froze, my mind racing for the right words, the right reaction. Nothing about this was supposed to happen. Family didn't fall for each other. Mentors didn't invite feelings like that. I told him gently but firmly that he was confused, that admiration wasn't love. He insisted he knew the difference. He said he'd kept it to himself for months, that moving closer to me had only made it harder to hide. His voice trembled as he spoke, but his eyes were sure, and that certainty broke something fragile inside me. We walked back to the inn in silence. Every step felt heavier than the last. I didn't know how to undo what had just been spoken into existence. I didn't know if it could ever go back to what it was. The morning after the confession was strained with an awkward politeness neither of us could quite break. Breakfast was filled with empty words, discussions about the weather, the plans for the drive back. Every so often, I caught him looking at me with that same wounded tenderness, and each time, it sent a wave of guilt crashing through me. I kept reminding myself that he was young, that emotions could be misinterpreted, but a small part of me feared something deeper had been set in motion, something neither of us could easily control. During the drive back, we spoke less. The tension sat thickly between us. He apologized once, voice soft, saying he never meant to make me uncomfortable. I told him it was fine, that emotions could be messy, that it didn't change how much I cared for him as family. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they weren't enough. Some things, once said aloud, refused to be buried again. Weeks passed. I thought distance would heal the discomfort, thought time would dilute the feelings he had confessed. Instead, he found reasons to visit more often, reasons that seemed innocent but felt increasingly deliberate. A forgotten book he needed to pick up, a late-night call for advice, sudden tickets to events he thought I might enjoy. He wove himself carefully into the fabric of my days, each gesture small enough to excuse, but heavy enough to feel. One evening, after helping me fix a broken shelf, he lingered longer than usual. As I poured us both a drink, he stepped closer than necessary, reaching out to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I froze. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His hand brushed against my cheek, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the space between us. I stepped back, heart hammering, stammering some excuse about needing to get up early. He apologized again, but this time, there was frustration under his words, a resentment at the invisible barrier I kept throwing up. I knew then that whatever innocence had existed before had been chipped away, replaced by something heavier, something dangerous. I found myself questioning everything, my actions, my intentions, the way I laughed at his jokes, the way I hugged him when he left. Had I somehow encouraged this without realizing it? Had my loneliness, my need for closeness, opened a door I should have kept bolted shut? Guilt gnawed at me, but so did an uncomfortable realization. Part of me had felt seen, desired, needed in a way that had been missing from my life for too long. But acknowledging that truth terrified me even more, because it meant I was no longer just a bystander to his feelings. I had become a participant in a story that had no rightful place in either of our lives. I knew what needed to be done. For his sake, for mine. I had to end the connection before it twisted into something neither of us could recover from. April 28th, 1:30 p.m. Fahad Ali Baloch. The decision weighed on me for days, but the answer was clear. I needed to create distance firm and undeniable. I started by limiting communication, replying to messages late or not at all, turning down casual meetups with polite excuses. Alex noticed immediately. His messages became longer, more emotional, filled with confusion and subtle pleas. He asked if he had done something wrong, why I was pulling away when we had always been so close. I crafted careful, measured responses, reassuring him that life had simply become busier, more demanding. I lied to protect him. I lied to protect myself. When he showed up unannounced one evening, I knew I could not avoid it any longer. He stood there, holding a small gift, an old book he said reminded him of our conversations. His smile faltered when he saw the guarded look in my eyes. Without inviting him in, I thanked him quietly and told him it wasn't a good time. Hurt flashed across his face, raw and sharp, but he nodded and stepped back. Watching him walk away was harder than I had expected. Days turned into weeks. Eventually, the messages grew fewer. He stopped dropping by. It hurt more than I cared to admit. There were nights I stared at my phone, missing his presence, missing the easy companionship that had somehow turned so complicated. But I never reached out. I forced myself to remember why the distance was necessary, why the fantasy of salvaging the closeness without the complication was just that, a fantasy. Months later, I heard from his mother that he had started dating someone new, a girl from his internship program. She spoke about it casually, unaware of the tangled history between us. I listened, nodding, pretending to be happy for him, and part of me truly was. He deserved someone who could return his feelings freely, without the weight of guilt and betrayal hanging over them. Someone who could love him without question. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if he thought of me when he looked at her, if pieces of what he had once felt still lingered in the background of his new beginning. It was a selfish thought, one I buried quickly. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he was moving forward, creating the kind of life he deserved. As for me, I learned something that year I hadn't expected. Love, even when misplaced, reveals things about yourself you can't ignore. It shows you the parts that are vulnerable, the parts still aching to be seen, to be needed. It forces you to face truths you might have spent years denying. I realized how easily loneliness can masquerade as connection, how the heart can blur lines the mind knows better than to cross. I would always care for Alex, but now from a distance, in a way that honored what was right, not what was easy. Some stories are not meant to be rewritten no matter how strong the temptation. Some kinds of love, no matter how fierce, must be left behind, buried in silence, preserved only in memory.